She's the one that just said operant conditioning. Attachment theory. So there are 4 types of attachment styles that we pretty much hear people talk about or that you're familiar with. So secure attachment style, where everybody wants to strive and be. You're pretty much growing up in a household where there's consistency. Your caregiver was responsive, warm, attuned to your needs. You felt like you were heard, and you know, grew up in a secure establishment. Then you have that anxious ambivalent. That is pretty much when things were a little inconsistent. Sometimes they were responsive, sometimes intrusive, sometimes neglectful. Nothing consistent there. So it was ups and downs in different areas of your life. And then avoided, a lot of times it was rejecting. So unresponsive, cold, distant, disengaging. So these individuals begin to avoid when there's conflict, situations they don't feel comfortable with. Just in general in life, they just avoid a lot of situations and circumstances. And then you have disorganized type. Those individuals are normally frightened. They come from backgrounds where there might have been a lot of abuse, a lot of chaos, a lot of unresolved trauma. That is what you're looking at when you see these different attachment styles. Danielle, go ahead. I'll let you do it. I'm not gonna, go ahead. You got off mute real quick too, so go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, of course. Good morning, everybody from here. A 28-year-old female client reports a history of severe childhood neglect. She describes her relationships as chaotic, with a constant push-pull dynamic. In therapy, she initially idolized the social worker, but became hostile and devaluing after the worker had to reschedule an appointment. Which attachment style is this client most likely demonstrating? I'm gonna do A.
Okay, so you're saying A. Anybody else thinking something differently? She's saying disorganized, fearful, avoidant. No one else is thinking something else? Everybody's agreeing to that?
I think it's C. I think that's anxious and ambivalent.
I put C.
I like C for it.
C.
Okay,
I'm thinking Delta, avoidant, dismissive.
Oh, okay.
That's say D.
I was thinking C, but then I thought about when they said the chaotic. So I was like, well, maybe A. So I'm between A and C.
All right. So let's go back, think about it, and then we're going to take one more final go, and then we're going to show the answer. So just think about what you guys would pick. How many of you are still saying it is D? I think A, C, and D were the ones you picked. So who's going with A? Disorganized?
I changed to an A.
I'm going to A. Keep an A.
Okay. So people are changing to A or keeping A. Okay. And then C, anxious ambivalent. Who's going with that one? All right. What about avoidant dismissive? Who's going with that one? All right. Looks like we're going to pull that one. So we're going to stick with A, disorganized. The client presents is a classic for disorganized attachment, often linked to severe childhood neglect and trauma, the push and pull dynamic, the idolization to devaluation, the chaotic relationship. So these are all the things that we have to pay attention to and kind of look forward when we're looking at these. All right, so we're going to move on with Mahler object relations theory. So let's jump into that. All right, so we're going to talk about the 4 stages here. It goes from normal autism, symbiosis, differentiation to practicing. Those are the 4 that you need to be aware of when we are looking at Mahler. One of the things you need to remember when it comes to Mahler is that she deals with early childhood. So it's not like she's talking about, adults and so forth. A lot of the focus is on early childhood. So between 0 and 2, you have normal autism. Sleep-like state, the infant is largely unaware of the outside world and they're focused on just their internal needs. Sounds a lot like the beginning stages of Piaget and Freud, 0 to 1, when they're just kind of focusing on being fed, comfort, and those types of things. All right. If there's any disruption here, according to Mahler, during the 0 to 2 months, and they will have difficulty with basic trust. The infant is not yet attached to a specific caregiver. They don't know. Well, I don't think that's true. I think they do know who their caregivers are, but they're not extremely attached. 0 to 2, as long as you're feeding them, changing them, and taking care of their basic needs between those 2 months, the first 2 months of life, they're pretty much okay. Now, between 2 and 5, that's when symbiosis takes place. That is when the infant is aware of the mother, but functions as if they are just one unit. So they feel like they are connected to the mom. That is who they are. No distinction between their self or anybody else. It's just the same. We're going to look at symbiosis and say similar, same. We're looking at putting it together. The foundation for future relationships, if it's not healthy, if it doesn't have healthy symbiosis in this early age, it can cause disruption, psychotic level fusion, or severe detachment. And this is what happens when they get in their older age. Then you have differentiation. That is something known as hatching. That is when the infant begins to distinguish their body from their mother's. Between 5 and 10 months, they're like, oh, okay, I am me and they are them. And they're able to realize and become a little bit more alert to the world around them. And then the significance here is that you have that stranger anxiety. That is when that begins. The child starts to check and look back and forth to make sure the parent is there, to make sure they're safe and in a good space and place whenever this takes place. And then practicing 10 to 16 months. This is the emotional refueling. They're crawling, they're walking around, they're just exploring all around them, their surroundings. And they move away, but they always return back to their mother or their caregiver for reassurance. And the clinical significance is that if they have increased autonomy as a child, they realize that they can be physically separate and still connect with that person. It's not like they're completely gone. They're able to connect. And then the last two, which are very popular that you guys probably have heard of, you have rapprochement, and that is where the child realizes physically separated from their parents. They're a little bit vulnerable. They move away, but they quickly return. Intense ambivalence. So this is that push and pull. Like they want to be in your presence, but they don't want to be in your presence. Is me, is mine. They're doing their own thing, but then they want to make sure that you're not in their space while you're doing it, but they still want to make sure you're somewhere around. That's kind of the crisis that child is in. Just think about a child. Someone said yesterday, think about your children or nieces, nephews, kids. If you're a teacher or been in the school system, just working with children in general, you see them go through these stages. So in this stage, the individual, once, they have that ambivalence about, how close and how much they want that person there. Now, if they have some issues growing up and their needs are not being met between that age and they have some disruption, that is where these borderline personality disorder features come in. That's where splitting takes place. That's where fear of abandonment, those unstable relationships, that all takes place in this, if things in this stage of development are not good or solid or kind of rectified if it is problematic. And the last one is object constancy. We always hear about object permanence. You guys heard us talk about that yesterday, object permanence. Today, we're talking about object constancy. So they can be similar and overlap and kind of confused, but with object constancy. So when it comes to object constancy, the child internalizes a stable, positive image of the mother. They understand that she exists even when they're not seen. So remember when I used object permanency, I did that, not activity, but I told you guys yesterday, I always think of peekaboo when I'm in the grocery store or just little kids in general, because they see you and they're just amazed that you're still there behind your hands when your hands go down and that thing. Like you can be there and not, well, be there and I was gonna say not be there. You can be there, but necessarily they're not seeing you that way. So they understand basically that you exist even when not seen, and they can self-soothe when they're apart from you. And that's 24 to 36 months. So this child is about 2 to 3 years old. They're probably in daycare. They're a little bit more independent, and they understand that even though I can't see my mom and they drop me off, that she still exists. She's still somewhere and she's gonna come back and that is what takes place. Now think about it. In some situations, circumstances, the parents don't come back or they're not as consistent. So sometimes they show, sometimes they don't. Other people pick them up and fill in fill in when they're not doing their part, or sometimes the kid might have to go into foster care, other things happen. So it's really, really important to understand how things can take place and what can happen if a child needs are met during these certain stages of development. So for here, the clinical significance is the foundation for mature adult relationships. That is what you want to see. But if it fails, they have difficulty maintaining emotional bonds despite the distance or the conflict. All right, let's see, Ruth. Go ahead. Can you start out, Ruth, for this? You help us out with this question. All right, Ruth, I don't know if you're muted or unmuted. Let me see, Sherry, can you do this one for us?
All right, a 28-year-old female tells a social worker, I feel like I don't exist when my boyfriend goes on business trip. It's like I'm falling apart. She reports calling him 20 times a day and cannot self-soothe until he returns. According to Mahler, this client has likely failed to achieve which development milestone?
A, object constancy, B, rapprochement, C, symbiosis, or D, differentiation. Everybody put on your thinking cap. She's gonna give us her answer, and then let's see. Adriana, I'm gonna have you chime in. I love how I can see you guys off on the side and just catch y'all off guard. You also pay attention, Adriana, because you're gonna let us know whether she's right or not.
Is it A?
Object constancy? Okay.
Oh, you said A. Let me see. I can't see the two bottom.
It's object constancy and rapprochement, symbiosis, and differentiation.
I'm going to say I'm going to say B.
You're going to say encroachment. Okay. So before we go over this answer here, let me just... So you guys are reading, I see a few of you are reading, but it says object constancy is the ability to maintain a positive internal image of a loved one even when they're absent or frustrating. The client feels like she's falling apart and cannot self-soothe when her partner travels. This indicates the lack of the internal structure to feel safe without the physical presence of the object or, say, the partner. There is. She may be acting symbiotic. The clinical deficit is the failure to achieve the final milestone of constancy. We're going to move on to learning theories. After learning theories, all right, so learning theories, we have the classical, operant, and social learning. These are the three that we're going to be talking about. So learning theories comparison. This is the comparison chart. This is pretty much what we're looking at. All right, so the learning theories comparison, you have the classical conditioning, operant conditioning, and then you have the social learning with Bandura, monkey see monkey. All right, so classical conditioning, we have association. So how you can remember this, because this is still, difficult for people to understand, myself included. You have to go over it over and over and over again to kind of understand it. The classical conditioning, you have Pavlov, it's the saliva in the dog and all that stuff. But what I want you to get from here is that you're learning from association or through association. So you're associating something, and that's how you're learning through that association with it. So the dog salivates, they hear the sound of the bell. So the association is the bell that they start salivating, and then so forth. So you can see that learning is through that association of something. Normally, when you're looking at the clinical application of this and how it might present on exams or going through things, is treating phobias and trauma. So this is where systemic desensitization, exposure therapy, all those types of things, you're breaking the association. So think about it. Someone is scared to death of the elevators, getting on elevators. So exposure therapy will be exposing them to the elevator and getting on and walking them through and working them through all that. So that is an example. They learned to be fearful, or they associate something with that elevator that's making them fearful. So when you look at operant conditioning, you have Skinner, you're learning through consequences. So there's a consequence that took place and you're learning from that. That behavior is shaped by reinforcement and punishment. So behavior modification, such as parenting skills, token economies, those types of things are behavior modifications that are used to help people learn, benefit from the consequences or not getting something or getting something. That's the behavior modification piece. And then you have social learning. That is learning through observation. Monkey see, monkey do. You see someone do something, and especially if it's something good and they benefited from it, you're likely to do the same thing. A lot of role playing, modeling healthy communication styles, coping skills, all those things come from social learning. So going a little bit deeper into classical conditioning, this is pretty much the power of association. So again, with this one, learning occurs when a neutral stimulus is paired with a natural stimulus, and then it triggers something involuntary. So we go back, you look at the example here, you have unconditioned stimulus, response, conditioned stimulus, response. So the US, UR, all that stuff. Looking at operant conditioning, so this one, behavior is voluntary and is shaped by what happens after something takes place. So if the consequence is good, then we do it again. If it's bad, then we stop. That's pretty much what operant conditioning is learning through the consequences. All right, so you have positive reinforcement, adding something good, positive punishment, adding something bad. So staying for these two right here. Positive reinforcement adds something good. So you cleaned your room, here is a sticker. Or you did well with doing all your chores or schoolwork, we're gonna give you, some money. You see that you're adding something good, so you're kind of trying to reinforce that positive behavior. Positive punishment, you add something bad. So you hit your brother, now you have to do something extra. I'm giving you chores. See, you're adding something bad. I'm giving you chores. I'm giving you yard work. Those types of things. That's positive punishment, trying to get someone to do something less, trying to get them to decrease a certain behavior, but you're doing that by adding on something bad. And then you have negative reinforcement, that's removing something bad. So negative reinforcement is moving something bad. You have an exam decoder. If you're looking at positive, something is added, negative, something's removed. Reinforcement, you're trying to increase a behavior. Punishment, you're trying to decrease a behavior. All right, so let's see here. Observational learning. Learning occurs while watching others. So this is the gap between behaviorism and cognitive theory. So when you look at it, the first part, it requires four things. First, attention. You must actively focus on someone's behavior. Retention, the observer must be able to remember what they saw. And reproduction, they have to have the physical and mental ability to kind of copy that specific behavior that they saw. And then motivation is pretty much the outcome of that behavior. So some of the terms you need to know is vicarious reinforcement. We learn not just from our own consequences, but seeing others rewarded or punished. All right. Self-efficacy, the belief in one's own abilities to succeed. So if you have high self-efficacy, it is more likely to, you're more likely to attempt or persist with that specific behavior. All right, go ahead, Rodney, if you can answer this question for us.
A 7-year-old boy is brought to therapy by his parents. They report that he refused to go near swimming pools and becomes trembling and fearful whenever he sees one. The parents explain that he nearly drowned in a pool last summer. I would say it was operant conditioning.
Okay, operant conditioning. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I'm gonna go with what Rodney said earlier. I think it was Rodney, but classical conditioning is based on either a negative response or something, or a trauma. I think it was Rodney who said that, but that stuck in my brain, so I'm gonna go with Bravo.
I'm gonna say B as well.
B.
Well, Rodney's the one that just said operant conditioning.
He was talking about this a minute ago.
All right, and let's see. The child's fear is an involuntary physiological response, which is the panic triggered by a specific stimulus, which is the pool. This is an automatic association, not a choice. So you have the unconditioned stimulus, which is near drowning, the unconditioned response, which was the fear of panic. The conditioned stimulus was the swimming pool, and the conditioned response was the fear, the panic that they have now learned. So why not the others? Operant conditioning, the fear wasn't learned through rewards or through punishment. The child isn't choosing to be afraid to get a prize. Social learning, the child experienced the event directly, not by watching someone else drown.